today we're going to be talking about Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. And this is actually translated to Norwegian. That's why the title looks a little different. I would say that one of the book's strongest points is the structure, because it alternates between the past and the present, and also with the murder mystery. But I wouldn't say the murder mystery is that big part of the book. In fact, it only plays a big role in the last 50 pages of the book, where you get the details. But it's intriguing. That's what I'm trying to say. It gives you very little room to get bored. You're constantly uncovering new layers of lies, but also new information about the characters. And I think at the end of the day, this book is about the characters. It is a character study. It's not the murder mystery that is in focus, but it's more about the characters themselves. It was kind of like solving a puzzle. You get to solve the puzzle of why are these characters doing the things that they're doing. It makes it easier to emphasize or sympathize with the characters and make them, because they're all morally gray. There are no anti-heroes or heroes in the book, because they're all equally faulty, and they're also very honest about their faults. Beth, she is a cheater. That's it. She has an affair with the man that she loves, but in the process she knows that she's hurting Frank so much. Oh my god. She's hurting Frank, but she can't stop. And then you have Gabriel, who is also faulty in that he was too prideful back when they were younger to go back and communicate better with Beth and basically win her back, but he didn't, and that's something that he also admits to, which I like. When it comes to Frank, he's almost painted as this perfect character, which kind of annoyed me in the beginning. He's this super lovable character. Nobody can hate him, including Beth and all of the townsfolks and her family. And even when she's in the process of cheating on him, she's constantly thinking oh, how can I do this to him? How can I be doing something like this? I'm so horrible. Not just because she's cheating, but because she's cheating specifically on Frank. Frank, out of all people, he's so amazing. He's just so honest. He's all this, but you realize as you're reading the book that he has its own faults that may not be that apparent. Him not being able to process grief is something that really ruins him, and also I think ruins the relationship that he and Beth have. When Bobby first dies, he wants to ignore that pain. He wants to not talk about Bobby. He doesn't want to bring him up. It hurts him too much. And I think a big part of it is that it's not just the grief that he's tackling with, but also the guilt. Whereas Beth, she wants to keep talking about Bobby. She wants to keep his memory alive. She looks at his picture all the time, but it's almost like she's scared to tell that to Frank, because she knows how much it's gonna hurt him, because his grief is in this messy ball with guilt, if that makes sense. And that's why when Gabriel comes and he lets her talk about it, he lets her have grief or process the grief in the way that she wants to, it opens up all these feelings. But in the end, when Frank finally gets to let go of this guilt, because he takes the blame for what happened with Jimmy, which was his way of dealing with the guilt of not just what happened to Bobby, but also the fact that Bobby wasn't actually his. He finally gets rid of that guilt or process it by talking to Leo about it. He now can process his grief alone, and that's why in the end, him and Beth can have a relationship, and they can finally be free from the shackles of the guilt that he had been dealing with all along. So you could say that grief and losing Bobby was something that brought Beth and Frank together, but also split them up, because number one, they didn't know how to process the grief together as one entity. Instead, they were separate the whole time, and Gabriel showing up made that whole, just it made it more apparent, or just made it so much more obvious, I guess. It opened up this wound. So the real story here isn't the murder mystery or the affair, but the grief and how they all handle it differently, including Gabriel, because he also had to grieve the fact that he didn't get to know his son Bobby. And I know that people usually are very against affairs, cheating and stuff, which even I am. When it comes to books, I hate it. I hate that trope from the bottom of my heart. I hate it. But in this book, it's not just about the love that they had before, rekindling that first love. No, it's more of emotional understanding and just having someone to lean on, in a time when you feel like the one person that you could or that you should be leaning on is also the person that like is pushing you away, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that Frank pushed her away because he never did, but like even though he didn't verbalize it or directly tell her like no, I don't want you here, I don't want, because he was not like that, but it was this like unspoken thing between them. They're like, okay, I don't want to speak about Bobby. I don't want to bring him up. I don't want like anything to do, not anything to do, but like I don't want to be reminded of him. And then for her, it's like it was choking her almost because it's like I need to let this out. So that's my understanding of the affair and why it was so easy for her to fall into it, because it could have just been lust. It could have just been like, oh, I'm bored of this lifestyle, but I think it all was about the grief and just not knowing how to like or finding a new way to process it. All in all, I want to say that this was a beautifully written novel that tackles grief in a very honest, very emotional way, because you know it is an emotional book. I didn't cry, but towards the end I was on the verge of crying. Like it was the whole time I was just thinking how horrible it must be to lose your child. We often hear that that is has to be or is one of the worst things that you could go through, and I wholeheartedly believe that, because it's one thing to lose your parents, but that's almost like it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be that way because you're older than you, but your child like no, it's not supposed to happen. So it's grief, it's confusion, it's like why not me? I gave this book I would give it like 3.5 to 4 out of 5. I'm gonna be honest, when it comes to rating, I struggle sometimes because I'll rate a book a 4 out of 5 and then I'll rate another book 3 out of 5, but then that book isn't necessarily any worse than the first one, or just like I don't know, like I sometimes go back and I re-rate it, but at the end of the day I know what I feel about the book and that's what matters. My experience reading it, that's what really matters, and not just like the amount of stars I give it. But obviously it's nice to have like a visual like representation or like a visual something to like when I look back at my the books that I read, to just remember like, oh okay, so this book isn't, you know. But all this to say that ratings, I don't put that much emphasis on the ratings, to be honest, but I would give it like a 3.5 to 4 out of 5, and I would definitely recommend it. I have some other books now that I'm currently reading, and I want to make reviews of those too. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.